Hello folks, I'm John Myrie and welcome to the Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. On this week's show we have reports from Jamie down at Hayward Bait and Bottle, and then we talk with our local DNR fisheries biologist Max Wolter about lake biology and fish biology and a lot more. Lots to cover on this week's show, all coming up right after these messages.
Finally, we actually have snow to get out and enjoy. With perfect timing, Hayward Power Sports and Ski-Doo have teamed up to bring you unbeatable deals on your next snowmobile. The new 2026 Ski-Doo models are here with more arriving daily. So we're blowing out remaining 2025s by offering up to $2,000 in rebates, or a 3-year warranty, or 1.99% financing for 36 months on in-stock 2025 Ski-Doo snowmobiles. Hurry to Hayward Power Sports, just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77.
The Hayward Lakes Visitors and Convention Bureau in Sawyer County, Wisconsin welcomes you to our Northwoods hometown. No matter the season, no matter the activity, you'll always be surrounded by our great outdoors. What more could you ask for in a vacation destination? Woods, waters, world-class events. Contact us for information on lodging, dining, attractions, events, trail conditions, and more. Order your free vacation guide and start planning your getaway today. Visit us at haywardlakes.com or call 1-800-724-2992.
Riding along in my automobile.
Bumping into things unexpectedly? Make your first choice for collision repair. Ernie's Auto Body, featuring the most advanced collision repair facility in Northwest Wisconsin. With a state-of-the-art spray bake-down draft paint booth for that better-than-new finish, laser technology for precision frame alignment, loaner cars available, computerized estimates, written guarantees, and documented unmatched customer service, the clear choice is Ernie's Auto Body, south of Hayward on Highway 63 and Nursery Road, where quality is no accident.
Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering welcomes you to stop by for their great lunch menu. And while you're there, Lynn's also has a great selection of custom-cut meats and sausages, as well as many varieties of snack sticks, jerky, fresh cheese curds, and much more. Lynn's is open Mondays through Fridays from 9 to 5:30 and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering in Hayward.
Today, anglers fish longer. Today, anglers fish harder. Today, anglers rely more than ever on their electronics. It all comes down to catching more fish, and today, anglers rely on Amped Outdoors lithium batteries, period. Visit ampedoutdoors.com today to power your outdoor experience.
We're down at Hayward Bait and Bottle talking to Jamie down there. Jamie, you know, we're going we're going toward mid-February already, and that basically tells me we're on a downhill slope for the winter. And it looks like as we're recording this, we're going to have some warmer temperatures all the way through for quite a while now.
Good. Yeah, we're getting to that back half of the winter, just the way I like it.
Well, you know, and the fishing gets really good, too. We've only got a little while left for the walleye because the walleye will close, I think it's the first weekend in March.
Yep, it's going to be that first weekend in March. I don't know the exact date.
Yeah, but it closes, and then it'll be panfish, and we've got catch and release trout season. We've got, you've got catch and release bass open as soon as we get some open water guys can get into. But anyway, as far as the fishing right now, are you hearing anything on walleyes at all? I know it's been kind of slow.
Yeah, it's been a little bit slow. I mean, they're pretty steady. It's not picking up. It may be dropping off a little bit. They still like shiners and suckers on tip-ups.
How about northern pike? They've been pretty steady all winter.
Yeah, they've been pretty good. I mean, you use your jig and spoons and, walleye suckers and shiners on tip-ups.
Yep, and we're getting to the time of the year now where there's always some winter kill out there. There's bait fish die and small fish die, and they could let them go down to the bottom. And pike are scroungers. I mean, they'll eat dead bait.
Yep, anything and everything they can get.
As far as other fishing out there, are you hearing anything at all as far as the guys getting out trout fishing? I know the trout season is open, catch and release on the rivers. It's a little hard with the snow along the shorelines and some of the rivers froze up, but that'll start to change now as we get a little bit warmer weather.
Yeah, I've seen a couple guys, they're getting out there.
I know they're fishing up on the Shawinigan Bay up there. They're catching some fish up there. I know some nice lake trout. The guys are getting out. And there seems to be pretty good ice some places in the bay and other places up there. You better be careful.
Right. I know people have been driving the last, couple weeks or so. Be careful. My grandpa, he tried going out to Nelson Lake. He got stuck only 30 feet out from the ramp there. He needs new tires. I had to go shovel them out over the weekend.
Lots of things out there going on. I know As far as people, some of the people up here tend to make some road trips. You got the Fox River will be coming up. You've got Mississippi River. Those are all good waters that are only a couple, 2-3 hours away, 4 hours away, and good fishing for walleyes early in the year.
Okay, yeah. I know a lot of people go out to that St. Croix River. You know anything about that?
Yep, you can get on the St. Croix River too. So that's the part of that drains in the Mississippi River there.
Yep.
It's all good areas to fish as soon as we get open water enough. And there's usually, you get down farther south, there's always some boat ramps open you can get out and fish on. As long as we don't have a huge runoff. When you get a lot of meltdown and runoff, the river gets kind of wild and it's hard to fish it.
Dangerous.
It can actually get dangerous. As far as other stuff, you guys are gearing up the shop here. There's stuff going crazy around here.
Yeah, we've got stuff all over the place. Everything's, kind of boxed up and in a random spot. But, before fishing opener here, we're hoping to have everything in its correct spot. All of our product here for the year, or for the summer at least. And everything where it's supposed to be. And it's going to stay there for a while.
A lot of neat stuff out there this year. For some reason, they always seem to come up with new stuff. I don't know, sometimes it's to catch fishermen, not fish, but it does both, I think.
We have a lot of exciting things coming. Couple new Rapala baits. We've got some new plastics. They're called these little dice, I want to say. We'll still have our live bait year round. Never run out of that.
You got a whole back wall here full of Rapalas. I mean, it's just, Rapala has a lot of stuff, and they also own several other companies now, 13 Fishing, and they could go on Suffolk's Line and a bunch of others. These companies seem to get bigger and bigger all the time, and they got more product available. Yeah,
and it's very confusing. They'll buy each other out, too. So then you're switching distributors, and you got to just keep your eye on the product and keep up from, who's delivering what where and what best price you can get.
And it keeps you guys busy here. There's a lot more to it than just putting something up and put a price tag on it.
Right, exactly. Yep.
As far as planning fishing trips and stuff, we can start planning for spring fishing. There'll be sport shows coming up, a bunch of sport shows here from here the next month or two here. And a lot of people start making plans for getting away, and you can do it without going to sport shows. I mean, you can do some research online, look for that little out-of-the-way lake. I know you do a lot of shoreline fishing, and you can find some little spots out of the way below dams and stuff, and you don't need a boat. You can find a place to fish if you just take time to look for it.
Right, exactly. I like the small, quiet areas that I can fish from shore. Until I get a boat, that's what I'll be doing. But, always keep in mind there's tournaments going on, too. You can always reach out to us and see, if you want to get into a tournament. We've got those going on soon. We've got a lot to look forward this year with fishing. It's exciting.
It seems to be growing a number of people out there fishing out of kayaks and stuff, too, because they can get into these little small backwoods ponds that nobody fishes hardly.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. A couple of the kids here, the boys who are in high school here, they got a couple kayaks, and they all meet up with their friends and go hang out and fish together. It's really cool. And with a kayak, you can get into those more sketchy areas, and it's not as much of a risk as if you're with your nice $50,000 boat.
It's a lot of fun getting out there no matter what you do fishing. Jamie, I want to thank you for taking the time here, and anybody wants more information on what's out there available and maybe even some tips and stuff, they can stop by the shop here.
Yep, just come by the shop. We've got tips, tricks, baits, lures, anything you could imagine. We got it here for you. Thanks for having me on again, John.
Well, folks, we need to take a break right now and hear from some of the fine sponsors that make this show possible every week. When we come back, we'll be talking with our local DNR fisheries biologist, Max Wolter. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hunters and anglers, Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop sport and bottle shop in Hayward. They have a huge selection of ice fishing gear, including portable shelters, power augers, electronics, beaver dam tip-ups, ice rods, and just about anything you'll need for ice fishing. They also have archery supplies, bows, crossbows, muzzle loaders, ammo, and much more to help you enjoy the outdoors. While you're there, check out the bottle shop for a full selection of beer, wine, and liquor, too. Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop sport and bottle shop. There's no time like the present to explore Hayward, Wisconsin, one of the Midwest's most popular vacation destinations. With crystal clear lakes for water sports and fishing, miles of trails for riding snowmobiles, ATVs, cross-country skiing, hiking, and mountain biking, this area is buzzing with activity year-round. Combined with charming local shops and a variety of Northwoods dining options, Hayward is certain to offer both adventure and relaxation for everyone. Plan your trip today and find everything you need on the Hayward Area Chamber of Commerce website. From events and attractions to local dining, shopping, and lodging, visit haywardareachamber.com and start your next adventure now.
Today's UTVs are built for year-round performance, comfort, and reliability. The Polaris Start the Year Off-Road Sales Event at Hayward Power Sports is the perfect time to take yours home. Claim a $1,500 rebate on a brand new 2026 Polaris Ranger XP 1000 Northstar, their top-of-the-line model with a fully enclosed cab with heat and AC. Plus, as the 2026 machines roll in, Hayward Power Sports is making insane deals on the remaining 2025 Polaris UTVs. Claim rebates up to $4,000 off or financing as low as 0% for 36 months on select models. Polaris Ranger is the perfect machine to attach a plow to and make snow removal a breeze. Meanwhile, Polaris General is built with Test-to-Trail versatility, ready to get down to work or head off to play. Plus, Hayward Power Sports even has rebates up to $2,000 off the machine that started it all, the legendary tough Polaris Sportsman ATV. Let us team you up with the right Polaris off-road vehicle to suit your lifestyle and your pocketbook. Hayward Power Sports, just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77.
See dealer for complete program details. Always wear a helmet, never drink and ride.
Welcome back to another segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors, and this part of the show is brought to you by the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. For more information on lodging and vacationing here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out their website at haywardlakes.com. Well, folks, you're one of the people I get on here quite often whenever I can is our local Wisconsin DNR fisheries biologist, Max Wolter. Had a chance to sit down with Max the other day and talk about lake biology, fish biology, and a lot more. We're down at the DNR Ranger Station talking to Max Wolter. And Max, we're sitting here. We're just, as we're recording this, we're coming out of a stretch of some nasty cold weather. And, there's been people out ice fishing, and we've got actually not bad ice out there from what I'm hearing. But, just fishing in the wintertime. Let's talk about lake biology, what goes on out there. There's just, in the summertime, people know we have mayfly hatches and dragonflies and everything else, but in the wintertime, a lot of people think that the lake maybe just everything goes into dormant, but that's not the case, is it?
Right, yeah. It's easy to kind of picture everything going dormant and hiding for the whole winter because that's what we want to do when it's -20, -30 like it's been. Oh, ridiculous. But life goes on under the lake, right? The fish are still feeding. The whole ecosystem's still there, including, like you said, aquatic insects, right? They are often in their larval stage, so they're down in the mud or they're crawling around on weeds. And so if you're panfish, that's what you're looking for and that's what you're feeding on. And they're, looking for those things to kind of start emerging from the lake bed, which is why a jig and a waxie is pretty effective in the winter, right? Because it looks like a little critter kind of starting to come up out of the bottom of the lake, and they're just going to gobble those things right up. A lot of those things live either on weeds or in the mud. They burrow in the mud, and kind of that's their life, is getting nutrients from decomposing stuff at the bottom of the lake. And it's all still going on all year round.
Well, let's talk about the insect larvae out there. We know mayflies and dragonflies and stuff like that, and stoneflies in the summertime or the spring, whatever. We also have these little things called midge flies. But midge fly, that's a real important food source out there because it's a larva. Some people call it a bloodworm, I think, when it's in the water. And it's a real heavy, even the walleyes eat this stuff in the wintertime.
Right. Yep. So the midges you referred to, that would be kind of the Diptera family of insects. And it's everything that we'd kind of call flies. Right. So they're burrowing in the mud typically and getting their nutrients there. And then, especially as they start hatching, they're coming up out of that mud. But, you'll have fish that are cruising around on mud flats, and that's pretty much exclusively what they're looking for. So as an angler, you might think, oh, there's not much structure out there. Why would these fish be here? Well, the food is still right there in the mud. Those can be challenging fish to target because oftentimes they're kind of roaming, and you might be on the school for 10 minutes, sometimes less, and then they're gone, and you have to wait for them to come back around because there isn't that piece of physical structure that's going to kind of keep the fish glued to one spot. But there's a lot of food out there in those types of habitats.
When you're talking about whether it's midge flies after they come out in the air, basically as they're coming up in the spring or in the wintertime when they're in the larval stage, they're really small food items. So it's kind of like us eating a bowl of popcorn. You don't fill up on it. These fish are constantly roaming looking for more.
That's right. Yep, that's exactly right. And then the other group is zooplankton, which are even smaller than most of the insect larvae. And they're year-round too. And, species like crappie, bluegill, they really specialize on eating some of the larger zooplankton, which are not that much bigger than the lead at the end of a pencil, right? They're real small, but they're very abundant. And so you can make a living, so to speak, if you're a fish eating that stuff, if you are efficient at it and you're in the areas where there's a higher density of zooplankton. One thing we've talked about before, John, is, the zooplankton move in the water column throughout the day, and you'll see it, right? They move higher at night or in the evening and in the morning hours, and then they go back down as the light gets really intense. And so you'll have fish that are moving with that. And that's one of the reasons why as the light gets lower, you often find fish shallower and more active, because some of their prey is moving and becoming more vulnerable.
And we're talking some of the smaller food items like that. You're talking zooplankton. Not all fish are able to eat that, though. So the panfish can actually filter that out more. I guess walleyes can't use it, right?
Well, walleyes, when they're very small, rely on it. Every single species of fish that we have relies on zooplankton and this microscopic food at least for a portion of their life. And sometimes, like for a muskie, it's only like 2 or 3 weeks, and then they move on to start to eating fish. But that zooplankton's important for everything. And some species continue to eat it all the way up until they're adults. And if you look at some of the biggest fish we have in Wisconsin, like a paddlefish or a big-mouth buffalo, both of which can get to be over 50 pounds, paddlefish can get to be over 100 pounds, that's all they do, is they filter that zooplankton all day with their big specialized mouth and gill rakers. So there's a lot of energy, but like you said, you have to get, if you're a paddlefish, you're eating hundreds of thousands, millions of little zooplankton per day to get your energy.
But then, on the other hand, you've got some insect larvae out there that actually quite large in the water, size of minnows.
Right, yeah. Dragonfly larvae would be some of our biggest, or if you're looking at trout streams, you have hellgrammites. People used to fish with hellgrammites quite a bit. You can still find them. And they're just like a big, wriggly, they look like something that somebody at a soft plastics factory would have dreamed up in a nightmare. They're really funky looking things, but trout love them. They just go absolutely nuts for them. So there are some pretty large insect larvae that you can kind of mimic, or you can find fish keying in on.
Well, that's why when you have a dragonfly hatch or a mayfly hatch in the spring, sometimes the fishing gets really tough because these fish just gorge on it and they just get so full they're not eating anything more.
Yeah, especially with the mayfly hatch, right? And we see a little bit of that in our area, and then you go down on like the Mississippi River and you see the mayfly hatches that just coat everything. So that's an interesting one. But, those mayfly larvae, they're in the river for 2 or 3 years as larvae before they hatch out. So there might be a feeding bonanza as they're hatching, but fish also have the opportunity to eat those things at other times of the year too when there isn't a hatch going on. And mayfly larvae, some of the bigger species can be pretty substantial. They can be 2 to 3 inches long as larvae.
Well, and that's one of the main, we're talking about winter food sources, but that insect larva thing is really real important all the way up until we get in the spring, even at the spawning time.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you think about, if you're a medium-sized fish like a crappie or a smaller largemouth bass or smallmouth bass, there aren't little fish that are the right size for you to eat for big chunks of the year because they aren't very abundant until another spawn happens. And then in late summer, you have all these little panfish out there and all these minnows and things to eat. So it can be very important seasonally for them to find those other food sources. I would also throw crayfish in the mix here too, as we're talking about different things that are out there that are in that invertebrate category. So you got, smallmouth. Almost always a majority of their diet is crayfish, anywhere they are, lakes, rivers. Largemouth eat a lot of crayfish too. Walleye will eat some crayfish, and we even find crayfish in the stomachs of northern pike, muskies, panfish. Everybody likes eating them.
Yeah, especially when they go soft shell and when they lose their shell, and somehow these fish seem to know that.
Right. And there was a really cool study that came out, and it was actually done by the kids, I think like 13, 14-year-old kids of one of our top fish researchers. And they were snorkeling, and they observed rock bass hunting in packs for crayfish, where they had strategies for how to get the crayfish. One rock bass would go in front and distract the crayfish and get it to put its claws up like it was going to pinch it. Another crayfish or another rock bass would come around the back of the crayfish and grab it like velociraptors, which I thought was really cool. Or one would grab the claw and then the other would come in and start ripping at it. So they figure out how to do this, and sometimes they're even working together, which is pretty neat.
It's interesting, the food relationship. And you mentioned when they're working together, too. That's something, if you watch in your sonar, you can see it, or you got an underwater camera. whether it's bluegills or crappies or whether it's walleyes or bass, if you got 1 or 2 fish looking at your bait, you might catch them. If you got 4 or 5 or 6, you're going to get one of them.
Yes, you're right. Okay, and so here's a really interesting scientific thing I'll put out there for anglers to kind of start to incorporate into how they think about fish and fishing. There's something called optimal foraging theory, right? And humans actually understand this, and we've enacted this in our society in a big way. Optimal foraging theory means if you're a wild animal, you want to get the most amount of energy as food while expending the least amount of energy. That's how you get bigger. That's how you grow, right? So if you're a deer, you want to look for the acorn. You're not going to go across the county to eat some acorns. You're going to eat the ones that are next to you. It's the same is true if you're a fish. You don't want to spend a ton of energy chasing around a minnow that's a really good swimmer. You're going to look for the wounded one, or you're going to look for a crayfish that you can fit in your mouth. Something that's going to be easy to catch. And so think about that as you're making your presentations. You want to make it relatively easy for them. You want it to be a size of bait that's going to feel worthwhile. If you're a muskie, you're not eating zooplankton, right? Because It's not worth it. You want a big prey item that's going to come easy. So you're going to sit in that weed bed and you're going to ambush something big that swims by, right?
Yep.
So that's optimal foraging theory. And that kind of gets right into all the stuff we're talking about. Sometimes it is optimal if you're a bluegill to go and eat a whole bunch of zooplankton if they're right in front of you. Sometimes it's not.
Well, folks, we need to take yet another break and hear from even more of the fine sponsors that bring their show to you every week. When we come back, we'll have the second part of that talk we had with Wisconsin DNR fisheries biologist Max Wolter. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hey folks, come on over to Hayward Ace Hardware and check out the area's largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories. We carry top brands like Browning and Sig Sauer, and we have a great selection of the newest and hard-to-find models. We've got a large selection of ammo with more coming in daily. If you need a scope, we carry great brands like Leupold, Hawk, and EOTech, and we'll even mount it and bore-sight it for you too. We even sell suppressors and silencers. And don't forget to check out our Guns of the Week. Huge discounts on a variety of pistols, rifles, and shotguns that change every week. So stop on in to Hayward Ace Hardware, your firearms superstore. Hayward Ace Hardware, Highway 63 North in Hayward, or give us a call at 715-634-8700.
Care for the animals with help from Hayward Feed and Seed. They offer deer corn, mineral blocks, and their famous Big Buck blend. They can also satisfy the hunger of the other animals in your life with a massive variety of dog and cat foods, along with other pet foods and large animal feeds. Plus, they have an awesome assortment of cat and dog toys, along with heated water bowls and plenty of warm, cozy bedding for all the animals in your life. Open at 8 a.m. Monday through Saturday. See the experts at Hayward Feed and Seed. Hayward Animal Hospital is a full-service medical and surgical hospital featuring on-site laboratory, digital and dental x-ray, in-house pharmacy, and online store. Dr. Ostrander has 40 years of experience dealing with illnesses, injuries, surgery, and dentistry. Hayward Animal Hospital offers urgent care appointments and emergency surgery daily. Please call early in the day for these appointments. They open at 8 a.m. Hayward Animal Hospital is located 1 mile east of Hayward on Highway B. Call 715-634-8971.
Welcome back to the last segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. And folks, we're going to jump right back into the second part of that talk I had with Max Wolter. Well, and when you talk about size too, the muskie, a lot of the muskie guys figured this out a long time ago. Bigger sometimes means bigger fish. I mean, literally, sometimes I think these big fish, if you're talking the upper level muskies, we're not fishing things big enough, because I know I've seen them go after, 4 and 5 pound red horse in some lakes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that kind of just comes right back to that optimal foraging theory too. If you're a 52-inch muskie, you're not looking for 6-inch golden shiners. You want to eat that 21-inch white sucker or, 22-inch red horse or something. And then you're just going to sit and digest that for 3 or 4 days. And you're not going to eat again. And you're just going to absorb all that energy without having to expend any more energy, right? That's what's optimal. And that's what makes fishing for them such a challenge, because they're looking for something big and they're not eating that often. They're not going around chasing every 6-inch rapala in the lake, because it doesn't make sense for them to do that.
Well, the other thing, too, is our talking panfish for a minute here. I mean, if you get into a school of crappies or bluegills, and a lot of times I believe that the smaller ones will stay higher in the water, a little bit over the top, and the big ones are down below. And if you're fishing, I fish a lot of little 1-inch gulp minnows, Berkeley Gulp Alive minnows. And if you're fishing, you can't get it past them little ones. So you go to the 2.5-inch gulp, and they'll attack it on the way down, but you can get it down there at the bottom, and you wind up catching a bigger average-sized fish because you got bigger bait, and it kind of keeps the little ones away.
Yeah, right. Yep, exactly. And that's kind of another concept in fish management, which is a bit of a social hierarchy, right? The bigger fish get kind of the more optimal areas. They get to be right in the weed bed or right at the lake bed where there's more food. The little ones have to kind of settle for that next best position. We see that in trout too. If you've got a nice run in the stream, the dominant trout gets that first spot where the food is going to be coming at, and they get kind of first dibs at anything, and all the subdominant trout are kind of behind them, hoping that a few things sneak by. So there's kind of a whole, way that fish behave and structure themselves, and if you figure that out as an angler, it's going to help you find where the bigger fish are and how to catch them.
Well, when we were talking about fish in survival rates and forage and stuff, I seem to remember picking up some information where there's some of the really tiny forage sources maybe starting to disappear in some lakes, and that way would lead to maybe a lower population of fish like walleyes, because even though they spawn some, they don't survive.
Right, and this is what makes aquatic ecology so complicated, and sometimes a change in a fish population can happen, and we don't always have a great explanation. Why did this go down? Well, we don't know. Maybe there was a change at that very base level of the food chain like you're talking about. There wasn't as many zooplankton this year. Those aren't always things we're able to detect because there's so many different levels and layers to look at when you're looking at an aquatic ecosystem, and everything's so connected. Maybe it was a mismatch between when the ice went out and when the water started to warm up, and the zooplankton weren't there at the right time for the walleye. They started to bloom later, and the little walleye starved before they had anything to eat. That's the type of stuff we look at, and sometimes we just have to speculate. There's always more research. We're always learning more about this, but these systems are just so complex, and there's so much to look at.
And if you want to add in another dimension too, not all fish are successful spawners every year. Sometimes you mentioned crappies, it could be years between year classes of successful spawners.
Exactly. And that actually gets right into what I was just saying, which is, they will try to spawn every year, but they don't have to be successful every year. So if the conditions aren't right, if they get a big cool down, if we're talking about crappies, if they get a big cool down right when they're getting ready to spawn, they say, I don't like this. And a lot of those females will just leave. They won't even attempt to lay their eggs. They'll try to reabsorb that energy and keep it as a part of their body mass so that they're in better condition to try and spawn again next year. And so in a lot of systems, you'll see a really big year class of crappie when things are right. And then you might not see much for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or even a few more years. And then boom, here comes the next one. That can be frustrating for anglers because all of a sudden, well, where'd all the big crappies go? I'm catching a bunch of 7-inchers. That's how they function. They're just young right now, and we have to be a little patient, wait for them to grow up. It can also be really challenging from a fish management standpoint too, right? Because, we're trying to provide consistent fishing. It can also be tough if there's a huge year class. They're all competing for food, so they grow slowly. We like it when we can even out recruitment. And there are some methods that we can use to do that with managing predators and stuff. But a lot of this is just biology. That's how they function. They were doing it for a whole long time before we came along and started fishing for them and doing all that.
Yep. Well, Max, a lot of interesting stuff there. I want to thank you greatly for taking the time here and talking to us.
Yeah, everybody stay warm, and spring will be here before you know it.
Yeah. Well, folks, we're about out of time for this week's show. I'd like to remind everyone out there that if you miss a show, you can always go to our website at WNOradio.com, and from there you can link through to our podcast. You can also find the show on Spotify and all major podcast channels. And also, if you're looking for information on vacationing and lodging here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau website at haywardlakes.com or the Hayward Area Chamber site at haywardareachamber.com. And lastly, if you'd like more information on hiring a fishing guide when you're up here in the Hayward area, check out our website at WNOradio.com. We've got links to just about all the different guides and a lot of information in there on guides. We're out of time for this week's show, and we'll be back again next week with another interesting show for you. Thanks for listening.
Way up in the Northland where the recreation's great. So sit back, relax, kick off your shoes, sink in your easy chair. Come on along, listen with me, I'm gonna take you there to our Wisconsin Outdoors, our Wisconsin Outdoors.
This program has been produced and hosted entirely by Wisconsin Northland Outdoor Communications.